Maestro, how do you tell yourself the plot of Don Giovanni?
How do I tell myself the plot? My job is to tell the story to the audience, not to myself. Don Giovanni is a unique opera because on the one hand it is a myth with supernatural things like the Commendatore coming back from the death, and on the other hand it's a very realistic story, and it's even a story, you know, with roots in the Commedia dell'arte. So it's a story which works on many, many different levels, and I think it's important to try to make sure that the telling of the story embraces all of them. But there's also a really theatrical element to the telling of this story. And we have made a decision when we first worked on this production for 2011 to tell the story from Don Giovanni's point of view. He is in charge of the story, it's his story, and he tells it how he wants it to be told. For me, Don Giovanni is a character without whom the world cannot live. It's the life force, he's Eros in a way. And he's also a character to whom all the other characters are addicted. They cannot live without him. In a way, with an opera like Don Giovanni, the director is psychoanalyzing the characters while he's telling the story, so that the audience can come to an understanding of the desires of these characters, because this is essentially an opera about desire.
Apparently, Don Giovanni has a mystery. In your opinion, is this mystery solvable?
I hope not. I mean, you know, there are certain mysteries you don't really want to solve. The mythical side of his character means that he has to always come back, which is why in this production he's not the one who goes to hell. I mean, he goes to hell in a very theatrical way, but then he comes back and the others go because he's in charge. So I think that as an incarnation of the life force, he isn't any one person. And I think that all the other characters project onto him, particularly the women, of course, project onto him what they want him to be. That people, when they fall in love with somebody else, they tend to project onto the other person what they want. Donna Elvira, you know, it's almost psychotic. It's a hysteric, the way she's always running after him and refuses to take no for an answer. Donna Anna is much more complicated because I believe she represses what has happened. I personally don't believe that Don Giovanni's crime is to have raped any woman. I think the crime, as such as there is this death of the Commendatore, which may or may not be accidental. But I think that Donna Anna is a willing partner in this seduction. She invites him into her room, and then she's completely destroyed with guilt at what happens because her father is killed. And so she spends the rest of the opera lying to herself and to everybody else.
In your staging, there is a lot of theater within theater. Where did you find the inspiration?
It came from two things. The idea where I actually found the theatre within the theatre is in the second act when Don Giovanni says to Leporello, look, you get dressed like me, I get dressed like you, and you can keep Donna Elvira occupied while I chase after her maid. So that's just straightforward Commedia dell'arte disguise, until he says, let me see how he does it. When Don Giovanni says he wants to watch how Leporello does the disguise, and then he becomes the audience watching the mise en scène that he has instigated. And this whole section, which then goes on into this famous and quite complicated sextet, when all the characters come one after another, Don Giovanni is not there, and they're all looking for Don Giovanni, and so in this production he is watching them because they are like the theatre, and all these people who are desperate for him. I thought it was a way of showing that he's outside of the situation, but is actually aware of what all these people are doing and wanting from him. The other reason, the way we staged this, was that when I studied this myth originally with Michael Levine, the designer, we didn't feel that we wanted to set Don Giovanni anywhere. It's so universal, we didn't want to make it smaller by making it in a real locale in a particular place or time. So I thought that really where it's happening is right here at this moment. It happens to be taking place, the story, in La Scala. So it takes place here now. So it starts on the empty stage. Well, it starts with this strange thing of Don Giovanni making a reflection of the audience saying, if you like, it's a little bit obvious, but this story is about all of you. And if you want to see my story, then you're going to be involved too. It's not just a pretty thing that you can watch from the sidelines. You have to be part of it. And then we end up multiplying the references to the place we are. But it's really more about being in this place and not being somewhere else. It came from that, and also the fact that Don Giovanni is constantly staging what's going to happen. He's always stage managing the next scene, telling Leporello what to do, going to watch, hiding, coming in, and so on. So he's like a master director. So in a way, it also came from this.
Who is the commendatore in the final scene?
There's no one answer to any of this, any more than a staging is anything other than a proposition. And one is making propositions in which one hopes the audience are going to think about it themselves and decide whether they agree or don't agree or what they believe for themselves. I mean, in a way, in this production, Don Giovanni stage manages everything, including this death of his. It's important so that he can finally get 5 minutes on his own, that everybody thinks he's disappeared, that he's been punished. But of course, on another level, the commendatore suddenly appears at this very, very long dinner table and is suddenly there. There needs to be an element of primordial fear. It's there, we have this coffin and he's standing in it, and it's somehow also representative of our past actions. What's very difficult in Don Giovanni, and I think it's part of the mystery of the piece, is that the commendatore is the very first, practically the very first thing that happens in the opera. It's right at the beginning, when the commendatore appears and discovers Don Giovanni in Donna Anna's room and is killed. And it's a very, very, very long time until he comes back. So the notion of exactly what it is that Don Giovanni is being punished for, if he's being punished, is equivocal, because I personally went to a lot of lengths not really to have Don Giovanni guilty of anything in this production, because I feel that his force is ultimately a positive one, and it is all the other people who are negative. Elvira, Anna, these are the people who don't have the cosmic energy, who don't have the imagination, who don't have the scope. They pretend to be victims, but they're actually searching for this because they need something in their lives. Is the one who gets all the blame, but he is the free thinking, with duende, with eros, who attracts everybody else, and he actually inspires all of them. He's the one who gives them, like Falstaff says at the end of, I'm the one who makes the other people interesting. And that's the same for Don Giovanni. Without Don Giovanni, as we see in the final scene, they're all impossible. And actually, in some respects, as characters, they're quite boring because they only can function in terms of him. They have no real individual existence. And that's very unusual to have an opera where all the other characters exist only through their relationship to the main central character. In fact, I can't think of another piece like it.